Okay, hello and welcome to the next session. Next we have Art Journaling Seeds, Gardening and Tradition with Devon Meyer. I'm really excited about this session. It's a hands-on sketching and watercolor painting class that will help participants learn simple and beautiful techniques to record observations and experiences in their gardens, in the kitchen, and the community. We've gotten to do a couple of practice sessions with Devon, and she is currently traveling outside of the United States at the moment, and so has creatively found ways to be able to set up her camera to be able to record the art that we'll be doing together today. I'm Mike Bollinger. I'm the Executive Director at Seed Savers Exchange, and I'll be your host for this session. And before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge our community agreements once again. So for this conference, we just ask that you be respectful and curious, patient, speak from your own experiences, try to avoid jargon, be conscious of intent versus impact, and take space and also make space, take care of yourself, and think about, by embracing these community agreements, we embrace the collective responsibility to create spaces that are inclusive, respectful, and empowering for all. So thank you for that and keeping those in mind. Again, I'd like to give a special thank you to UNFI, our sponsor, for our community session today. This is a joy for us to be able to do, and with financial support from organizations like UNFI, we have the pleasure of being able to help provide the platform and honorariums for presenters. So it's really great, and we appreciate that opportunity. So today we're here with Devon Meyer. Devon teaches painting, drawing, and art to children and adults. Her classes are offered at Scottsdale Artists School and the Tucson Botanical Gardens, as well as through camps, outreach, and arts programs. Devon participated in the Arts Integration Program with the Kennedy Center and has had her work shown at the Audubon Society, Art Intersection, the South Camelback Studio Tour, the Franciscan Renewal Center, Scottsdale Artists School, and the Arizona Portrait Society. So Devon, we're so excited that you're here today. Hi, Devon.
Hi.
All right, so welcome. I am going to remove myself from the screen and look forward to spending the next hour with you.
Great. Thank you. Thanks so much. I'm so excited to be here. This is a real honor. My name is Devon Meyer, and I'm an artist, and I love using my sketchbook to observe things and to look at things a lot closer than I normally would have. When you're sketching and drawing, you have to observe at a level that's different than you normally do. And so you're looking for a lot of detail and information that you want to record. So today I'm going to give you a few tips on drawing and painting. We're going to be using watercolor to get you started or give you some courage to give it a go and see what happens. You don't have to be artistic to do art. I really believe it's a skill that you can develop and learn. We don't really make mistakes. We have happy accidents, like Bob Ross says. So the more mistakes you make, that means the more you're learning. So what I hope you get most out of this little time we have together today is to be fearless. I want you to just try things and experiment and see what works. And if something doesn't come out the way you expected, then see what you learned from that experience. So we're going to do a little bit of drawing, and we're going to go over some fun techniques with watercolor, and then we're going to put it all together and try to draw a few objects. So you might want to grab a couple natural objects that you might have close by, like leaves or flowers or fruits or vegetables, or of course seeds. Something that you want to maybe play with and practice with along with me, because I want this to be interactive, and I want you to give it a try and see what you think and what you can do. Let me start first by just telling you some simple tools that you might want. I have a mechanical pencil that I like to use. I like mechanical pencils because I don't have to bring a sharpener with me. And I like to draw on the go. So I like to always have a little kit handy. Um, I use, sorry, pens. I just like these a Uniball pen, which is, you can buy at an office supply store. I'm going to show you these a little bit better when I start demonstrating. But I also bought these, it's a Uniball pen with a size. They come in all different sizes. So I like to have different sizes. And then I have two little paintbrushes with me. I want art to be accessible and easy. I don't want you to not do it because you don't have every tool. I want you to have just the minimum and see what trouble you can get into. So I'm going to shift the camera to my desktop so I can share. I'm going to share my sketchbook with you, and then we're going to do some quick drawing exercises and then some watercolor. So give me a second while I switch over to my desktop. Okay, I hope that you can see my sketchbook here. Let me do this. All right, and some of my tools. Here's my paintbrushes and my pens. I have two different pens. This one is a regular Uniball, and this one is a different size Uniball pen. It doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be that brand. Just a pen that you like, but it needs to be a pen that is waterproof, because if it's not, the work you do will bleed or it will blur. I also have this little tiny watercolor kit. Here's my paints. Here's some mixing areas, which are super important. I'll explain later why you need an area to mix. If you just have a small children's kit, you can use the lid to mix colors. And then I have a little tiny pot of water right there. And I like to keep a paper towel close by just to dab my brush and to regulate my water. All right, so some reasons that we might sketch. You might want to record, and I'm going to share mine with you. You might want to record a thing that you see. And these are some little watercolor paintings I did of some animals that I observed. This slug, when I first looked down, wasn't super interesting, but as I got closer to it and to paint it, I noticed it had this bright orange foot around the base. So that was something I might not have taken the time to see. Also, the bumblebees that I keep finding here have like a white bottom. They're yellow and black in every way of a normal bumblebee, but by painting it, I noticed that its bottom was white. The goats seem to have a lot of expression, and I don't know if I caught that or not, but this guy was a real character. Let me show you another example. You can see I do all kinds of things. So that's an example of looking at certain objects. This was some gardens that I observed. So I divided my page into 3 different areas, 4 if you include this label right here. And so I really liked the way this garden was framed with nasturtiums. So I did a quick little sketch of the lettuce and the nasturtiums, and then I used some text to clarify what it was I saw. And then I just wrote planting ideas. This was a little recycled bug trap that I had seen that was really cool, hanging from a tree. So I did a quick diagram of that. So I use drawing and sketching to record ideas and technical things like how it was put together. Then I saw this beautiful water catchment system. So we were walking along a trail, and I saw that the water pooled here, and a farmer had caught it in a pipe, and it went down into a filter into this bucket, and then it went down again, and now it was filtered and it went into the first cistern, and when that was filled, it went to a second cistern. And I also noticed there were these little outlets for them. So that was kind of cool. And then one other quick one is today I was in a field, and there were so many different, very tiny flowers. And so I just sat down for a moment and just did a quick inventory of about 6 or 7 flowers that I saw. And I just used the tools that I've shown you. Okay, so let's get started with how do we draw? Like, what makes it easy? So I'm going to try to pick something kind of big so that you can see it. This was a branch off of a tree that I saw today, and I'm originally from Arizona, and we have a lot of this plant in Arizona. It's a citrus tree, and so um, yeah, I picked this, and I thought it was really beautiful. So maybe you have something organic that you want to draw. It does. I don't mean organic like testing. I mean like a natural object. If you don't, you can pick something else too that you have around. But I'm going to give you the approach that I would take. All right. So we're not doing botanical illustration. We're just trying to capture what it is that we see. And so what I want you to think about is general to specific. So I want the general idea of what it is that I'm seeing, and then I can get more and more specific. So I see this cluster of buds right here. So I'm going to make kind of a shape. I'm going to draw it rather dark because I want to make sure that you see it. But if I was really drawing it in my sketchbook, I'd draw it pretty light. And this is just sort of a guide to help me see what it is where I want to draw that. And I like to leave the lines that don't work because they guide me to the lines that do work. So I usually have several lines that will help me to draw something. And then I'm going to draw this leaf too. So I'm going to get kind of the direction of it, kind of goes down like this, and the general shape of it. Okay. So now I just have the general shape of this leaf and that, and this buds. Now we're going to do something that's called contour drawing. And if you think of like a bouncing ball when you're singing along with a song, but instead the bouncing ball is your eye as it traces the edge of everything that you see. So as my eye curves around this curve and goes over to this stamen and over here and around this corner, that's what I'm going to draw over here. And I've created this general shape to kind of keep me in line so I don't go all over the place. So my view is a little different than yours, but let me start with that. So I'm going to follow along here, and I see it kind of bulges out here, and then it comes back in right there. And as my eye slowly follows around that contour, that's what I'm going to draw. This isn't the only way to draw something, but I've thought a lot of how to teach new students how to draw. And I think this is a quick and easy way to really begin to observe and look for details that you might not normally see. Okay, so let me go all the way around it. Okay, so let me point out a couple things. Right here, I went out of the line. And here I didn't quite touch the line. These lines are just a suggestion. You're not going to get in trouble for going out or in that area. And now that I've got the general shape, now I can start fixing things. So I know that this was more of like a ball, and this was almost like a stack of characters to me. It's like, or a stack of blocks. It's this shape, that shape, and then this shape. This guy was like this. So now I'm coming in, and I said in the beginning, general to specific. This is the specific part. I'm getting a little bit more specific in there. Oh, I see this funny thing right here. It looks like a bunch of different shapes piled up here and here. So right now, I have a fairly good representation of what it is I saw. Now, if I was drawing this without a demonstration, this line would have been light, so it would have been easy to erase. But let me erase it a little bit. I have this really cool eraser. You don't need something like this, but it is fun and it works really well. It's just like a pencil. So I'm going to erase that general shape and just kind of, I can see my shape a little bit better. Okay. All right, so now let's look at the leaf. So again, I'm gonna really observe it. And now I've done a general shape, but I noticed this little tab thingy right here. It's like a pre-leaf. Again, I'm not doing a botanical illustration, but I am really observing. So I drew that little bump right there. And then I can see it comes around like this. So I'm going to follow it and try to get those little waves and bumps if I can. And then I see right here, it comes to a little brown point. And then I notice that this part of the leaf is gone. So I might make this little jaggedy part. Okay, and then it's a little thinner than that general shape I made. So I'm going to come in. Now, as I was doing that, let me correct this. I noticed something really subtle that I wouldn't have noticed if I wasn't drawing it. And that is, this is all brown right here. So it could have been ripped right here, or it could have been eaten. I don't know. But these are the things I might think about when I'm drawing. There's a really great artist. His name is John Muir Laws, and he prompts people to say, I notice, I wonder, or it reminds me. And I do this a lot when I'm drawing, because as you're drawing, you kind of go into a thinking state, hopefully, and you start wondering about things. So I noticed really these shapes were almost funny. They were almost like blocks, building blocks. And I wonder why this is brown right here. It could have been ripped, but it could have been eaten. And this leaf reminds me of home. So, okay, so that's one drawing. Um, let's do a little bit of color, and then maybe we'll have time to do a second drawing. So let's talk about color. Before we do color, I want to do a quick color wheel. I like to do color wheels with my students because it reminds us of how the colors are combined. So if you want, and if you're following along, make yourself a little donut like this, and we're going to mix some colors. So the primary colors are red, yellow, and blue. And I'm going to get this donut wet, this shape, this circle. I'm going to get it wet with water, because the first thing we're going to learn about watercolors is watercolors love water. And so they will travel wherever the paper is wet. And they will probably stay within those confines and not go to where the paper is dry. So you probably can't see the sheen on that, but I just got the outer circle to the inner circle wet. And now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to stir up my red. Now with watercolors, you really need to stir them to reconstitute the pigment. So I've used this kit quite a bit, so I'm pretty familiar with it. And I'm going to paint just a third of it red. And you can see that it's kind of blurring out. It's, like I said, watercolor loves water, so it's kind of flowing around. Now I'm going to clean my brush really, really well, and I'm going to get some yellow. And I don't know if you can see my kit, but it's really well used right now. So it's a little dirty. So I'm going to stay on this yellow side of my yellow. And then on another third, I'm going to do yellow. Now, where it meets the red, I want it to meet the red a little bit. So I'm going to encourage that. So I kind of pushed my yellow into the red. Now I'm going to rinse my brush again and get some blue. Let me make sure my brush is really clean. So I'm rinsing it and dabbing it on my paper towel. So now I'm going to stir the blue, and I'm going to do blue right here. Oh, it's kind of dull. That just means I don't have enough pigment on my brush yet. So when the blue comes over here, I want it to mix with the red. And when the blue comes over here, I want it to mix with the yellow. So I just dabbed it and sort of gave it a suggestion of where to go. I'm going to move my camera for a second. I hope it doesn't make you dizzy, but I want to get a little closer so we can see this. All right. So where the yellow and the red mixed, they made like an orange. And where the blue and red mixed, they made a purple. Where the yellow and blue touched, they made a green. And that just helps me remember that whenever I'm painting, if a color is never just plain green, there's dark green, light green, brownish green. And so I know that if I can take different variations of blue and yellow, I can find most colors. All right. So now that we've done this basic color wheel, we're going to do something more with that in a minute. But I'm going to give this leaf a base coat of green. So there's two ways I can do it. I could get the whole leaf wet if I wanted to, or I could just paint straight on dry paper. Since we've already done, it's called wet into wet, I'm going to paint straight onto the paper now. And we're going to add color to it when it's wet. So the first thing I'm going to do is clean off a little area so that I can make a nice bright green. But I see lots of different greens on this leaf. So I'm going to think of like maybe the base color of green. And my kit has a green right in it. I use it a lot, but I always add to it. So I've got this green. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to it because it doesn't seem bright enough. And I'm going to give this leaf just a base coat of green. So I need to make sure my paintbrush is really juicy and wet. So I should have made sure I made enough of a puddle to cover my whole leaf. So I'm adding some water. Every time I dip, I'm adding a little bit of water. Okay. So I remember that the tip was kind of brown, so I'm going to leave the tip out for now. All right, so I wasn't very fussy about this. I just gave it a nice coat of green. But now I want to add some of this the dark parts that are going on. So I'm going to take that green again. Yeah, I hope you can see my puddle. And then I'm going to add some blue to it because I want it to get a little bit darker. Whoops, it looks like I went a little too far. That looks pretty dark. That's okay. I'll add some yellow to it to maybe lighten it up. Okay, a lot of times I feel like I'm chasing the color. That means I don't get it the first time or the second, maybe the third. But if I'm honest, it's usually the eighth. So I'm adding a little water and a little yellow. All right, so before I add this dark, I'm going to think about what do I see. And I think the dark is happening where there's shadows. And also I know this is wet, so my paint is going to kind of go wild in certain areas. So it's going to kind of bleed. So I'm looking where I see some dark areas. Again, it's not a botanical illustration, so I'm not too worried. It doesn't have to be exact. It's just me thinking about this leaf. Okay, I want to show you something that's happening. All right, so right here my paper had already dried, so it didn't bleed very much. And so I kind of want it to bleed. I kind of want that look. So I'm going to get my brush wet just with water. And I'm just going to kind of suggest, I'm giving it some water to go to. And I'm just going to kind of suggest, hey, I want you to blend out a little. And here the lines are too defined. So again, I'm just going to take some water and kind of suggest where it goes. I think of watercolors as like an unruly 2-year-old that you don't have a lot of control, but you have a little bit. You can make suggestions. So I'm taking some dark and going along the edges where I think it's still wet, maybe over here. And if it's not wet enough, I can always get it wet right on top, like this. That edge was a little hard. And then I want to do this brown. So I'm going to mix up a little of this yellow ochre and some brown. Some yellow and brown maybe. And I'm going to get that tip. And when I really look at it, I see it kind of goes off there. And now I think while I remember it, I'm going to get that little brown edge. And I don't care if it bleeds a little because I think it looks kind of cool. All right, so there, I did a leaf. Oh, let's finish it up and get the that base part right here. And I guess while I'm at it, I might as well do these too. So for a quick sketch, that looks all right. Now here's a problem that you have. How do you paint white? I guess these blossoms are, let me get them over here. Oops, the buds are kind of white, but if I really look at them, they have a really beautiful shadow. I like to make shadows with purple sometimes. Purple seems to read well as a shadow. So I'm going to mix some blue right here and some red. It looks a little dark, but if I add some water, I want it to be very, very, very light purple. So let's see if I've got that. So I'm just giving a little bit of a shadow suggestion right here. Yeah. Okay. So for a quick sketch, that looks pretty good. I think I've caught the essence of this, the beginning part. Let's do another one. I found these 2 tomatoes at the farmer's market. Look at that one. So this one looks nice too, but let's look at this one. So if I really look at this tomato, you know, at first glance that looks kind of black, but if I look at it harder, I think I see a little bit of purple in here. I think I would call that purple. And I love all the undulations it has. So I got to figure out how I can draw it and that you are looking at it the same way I'm looking at it. But I want to talk, before we do this, let's draw this, I'm going to draw this tomato, and then I want to talk about complementary colors, because complementary colors are super powerful in helping you get more subtleties. All right, so I'm going to draw this tomato. Again, I'm going to draw the general shape of it. So whatever that means, whatever's going to help me find the general shape. So I see a general shape here, a general shape here, and then maybe a general shape here with its stem right here. So that's just very, very general. So now I'm going to go around with a contour, and I'm going to see that it kind of comes flat and it comes out over here. Okay. So one thing we're going to do more on this tomato than we did on this leaf is we're going to look for lights, very light areas and very dark areas. I like to think of it as my lightest lights and my darkest darks. And I like to map them out. So it's almost like a map of where those things are. So I think of it as like a note to my future self. Okay, future Devon, don't forget to leave these areas light or make them really dark. So I'm going to start right here. So it's almost like a slice. I'm going to say, okay, that area I want light, and this area I want dark. And so then I see it kind of goes here and here, and it goes like that. So another highlight here and a light there, a light there. Those areas seem to be light. And then I'm going to come over here and go, okay, this area, I'm going to want it to be darker. That's a dark area. So this is called value. Value is how dark or light something is. And when you're talking about art, value is very important. The darks, to make your darks dark and your lights light. I'm looking for my eraser. Oh, here it is. Thank you. And I want to get that a little bit more accurate. Now, again, I'm drawing very dark right now because I want you to be able to see what I'm drawing. But in real life, I would do it a little bit lighter. So it looks kind of wonky, but this is going to really help me when I paint it. I've got my lights highlighted and I've got my darks highlighted. With watercolor, the way you get, and I'm also drawing this top part, the way you get light is to leave the paper. So once you've painted on a piece of paper, it's hard to extract the paint. Some paint stains more than others. So you want to make sure that you always make a note to yourself where your light areas are going to be. Since we did the leaf on dry paper, let's try this one. I'm going to get it wet, but I'm going to leave out the white areas. So I'm getting this tomato all wet so it will receive the paint. You'll have to play with it and see what you like to do. If you like to wet it first or just put the paint down on the dry paper. But I'm being careful when I go around those white areas because I don't want the paint to go there. So I've got the tomato all wet. And now I'm going to mix up just the general medium color, not too dark and not too light. So I'm going to give it all this kind of, it's an oranger red. It's not as dark as this red that I used on my color wheel. It's got a little bit of orange in it. So the paint should flow where the water is, but it's not flowing a lot. So I might have to nudge it along. I might have to help it find where it needs to go. With watercolors, you can add paint into paint. It's called charging it. And it's a really beautiful attribute of watercolors to get things to flow together. All right, so now I want to think about this dark area. So I'm going to pick up some of that purple that I had created. Oh yeah, I had created it for the buds. And I really want it to be dark out here and then kind of fade. So I'm kind of telling it where to go. I'm kind of nudging it along, but I'm also letting it kind of blend itself. So it looks like I need a little bit more purple. So I'm going to mix up some more purple, and then I want to go right here. Okay, that looks a little too dark and a little too blue. So I'm not going to freak out. I'm just going to add some red to it and charge it. It's called charging, and kind of add that dark over here. And then I'll try to pull some of it over here and some of it right here. Watercolor dries a little bit lighter than the colors that you're putting on there. So even though this looks a little extreme right now, I think honestly this tomato looked kind of extreme, so I'm not too worried yet. Watercolor is a little bit unforgiving. So sometimes you get to a place where you just need to start over, but I don't think we're there yet. Since I started with that light orange, I think I can darken it up with a darker red. So I'm going to get some red and make a little puddle of it. So I have some red. Okay, so I'm going to go over this area with that red, maybe a little bit, get it into here. And I'm going to add some more red here and some red here. So I'm kind of charging the colors again with even more color. Okay. And then I'll do the little top part. Now, I want the top part to be green and not red. So I wish that I had waited until my red was dry because the red paint found where the water was and ran up into it. But that's okay. It looks kind of cool. I would wait for this to dry now so that I can kind of come in and make some more, I can nudge it more. So let's let that dry for a minute and we'll come back to it. Let me see how our time is. All right. So let's talk about complementary colors. Complementary colors are when you have red, yellow, and blue. Those are our primary. If you mix them with a color that's opposite them on the color wheel, you'll get what's called a neutral. And the reason you might want to use that is, I'll show you an example in a minute. Red, the opposite of red is green. These are called complementary colors. The opposite of yellow is purple. So I'm just going straight across. And the opposite of blue is orange. If you mix these two colors together, red and green, yellow and purple, blue and orange, you get, it neutralizes the color. That means it kind of tones it down. Let me see. Here's some examples. Like I wanted the shadow of this lemon to be a little bit darker, so I added purple. That's the complement. The opposite is purple. Desert cactus, I always add a little bit of red to my green because the opposite of green is red, and it makes them more neutral, not like a lime green. Another thing, this is using the complementary colors, mixing them, but just using them side by side is advantageous. They're supposed to vibrate differently. So orange and blue together, the masters a lot of times used orange and blue together. It vibrates your eyeball. It's supposed to. But that being said, if I was doing a red tomato, I might use green to neutralize the red, but I might also just use green next to it. So what I did is I blotted out that moisture, and now I'm going to add some more green back up to that stem. And I hope it doesn't bleed into my tomato. Okay. All right. So let me talk about one other thing that I do a lot in my sketchbook. So we've talked about drawing. We did general to specific, just getting the general shape and then getting more detail. We talked about value, looking for the lights and the darks. We talked about color, red, yellow, and blue being the primaries, and then using the complements of those colors to sort of neutralize some color. But one thing that really makes my sketchbook pop sometimes is, let me try to find a page, is when I make labels, when I kind of label it or explain it. So this says stopping on the cliff above the sea and by Playa de Guadamilla. So I used different lettering. I used upper and lowercase here, and then I used some uppercase only. And that sort of gives it some emphasis. Another thing I might want to do is put like a banner around it. So I could just put a box. That works. But I like putting banners. Let me see if I can. I'll show you how to do a banner here. So a banner is, if you imagine this was a piece of ribbon that got folded. So if you think of I'm going to do it with pencil. If it got folded this way and then this way. Now I drew on the inside there just so I know where this will come out. I'll show you it here too. So it went this way and out. So it goes this way and out. Now, what's within this box wouldn't really show. So I can erase those guidelines. This can be a little bit confusing. I used to draw, or I used to cut a piece of paper out and fold it or kind of contort it like a ribbon. And that helped me make my ribbons look better. So now it goes like this and this. Okay, so now, I don't know, that helped a little bit. make this page a little bit more interesting. Let's see. Here I did types of trail conditions. Oh, here I made a wavy banner. I was thinking this lettering isn't dark enough, so I want to make it darker. I'll come back in with a dark pen. And this was a banner that I went really crazy with, and I made it really curvy. Okay. So using, whoops, here's something you should know. When you paint and then you close your sketchbook and it's still wet, this happens. But I never get too excited about that. I think it looks kind of cool, but it'll change your drawing a little bit. Okay, so let me show you how to do a curvy banner really quick, because they're always fun. So let's see. I'm just going to write sketching. Okay, and so I'm going to make that ribbon on the top. I hope you can see that. And on the bottom, this one's going to be curved. And then, so I'm going to make a straight line here and a straight line here. It doesn't have to be straight. And then I imagine it curves this way and that way. So you could do a dotted line if that would help you. I'm going to go doot, doot, doot. It would curve this way and that way. But this part of the banner is covering the back part. That back part just helps me to see where the banner peaks out on the other edge. And then I know that it would stop right here. Let's do it on this side too. So maybe it'll curve this way and that way. So it'll curve this way and that way. And I like to make the back side of the banner a little bit darker. It kind of, that's value again. So there, I have a banner that says sketching. Okay. Another thing, just a quick add-on. I like to give my objects shadows when they're all done. This tomato, I would like to give another layer of red, but it's still pretty wet, and so I'm going to wait. But on this leaf, I think I'll give it a little shadow, like it was laying on my sketchbook. And so I do that with purple, and I just think, okay, if the light was shining on it, where would that shadow be? And I give it kind of just that little shadow. That might have been too heavy. So if that was too heavy, now I have to give all of these guys a shadow too. I can just take water and kind of lighten it up, give that paint a place to go. Okay. And I'm going to give this tomato a little bit of a coat of red, a little bit more red. So I don't want it to overpower what I've done, because I kind of like what I've done, but I want it to just red up a little bit. But I still want those other colors to shine through. And then on the shine, it's sort of a strong line. So I'm just going to use a damp brush and kind of make those shines a little bit blurry. Now, I know this is a wet tomato, but we'll try to give it a little bit of a cast shadow too. I got to be careful because it'll bleed. That color is going to bleed. Okay. All right. Yeah. I think we have time to do one more little sketch if you'd like. Or let me show you what I've done here. This was a sketch I did earlier, and I just did it in pencil. So this is really how I would work on something out in the field. So I did this sketch and I wrote about 2 inches at the widest, so that area, found under an evergreen tree in the park of a church. And I remember it was brown. And actually, it was a very large pine cone petal, I think. So I gave myself some notes of what was happening, where it was darker and lighter. And so I'm going to paint this right now. So I'm going to give it a coat of paint. And this is just a pencil sketch. Sometimes I sketch with pencil and sometimes I sketch with pen. And either way works. Pencil you can erase, pen not so much. I have this nice color. It's called burnt sienna. Let me see if you could. Yeah. And I remember it was a really nice brown, this burnt sienna kind of color. But it wasn't all brown. I've created some shadows and some lines. So I'm going to give it that color just to start with. And then I want it to be darker in some areas. So I'm going to make a little puddle of brown and add some blue to it, because blue is going to make that look really nice and dark. And then I'm going to add some of those markings that I remember seeing. I have them sketched down here too. And I can see I can darken this up a little more. Okay. So I really think that if you give yourself permission to try with art, to try to draw, and to see what happens and to be playful and experimental, you'll be amazed at what you can communicate through your sketches. And I had a teacher once say, don't complain until you've painted a mile of canvas, which is a lot. So try and don't be discouraged. Be fearless and keep experimenting and having a sense of wonder, and allowing sketches don't have to be too fancy or too beautiful for you to capture information or ideas or thoughts. It can be a really fun way of looking at the world around you and, taking notes and remembering things. Let me see. Let's see how that be. Yeah. Look, it bled a little. The tomato shadow bled a little, but I think that gives it a little bit of character. If I wanted to take some of that off, I could. I'm kind of erasing that a little bit. All right.
Hey,
Yeah.
Devon, it's Mike.
Yes. Hi,
Hey,
Mike.
this is incredible. I feel so calm right now. And I know that we had talked about questions as they come along. It has been pretty quiet on the chat. I think everybody is just enjoying this, or at least I know that I am, and I see some comments about people loving this. There was just a question that came up. I'm going to pop it up here, and Joan writes, "What kind of sketchbook paper do you use?"
That's a really good question, Joan. This sketchbook that I have right now, it's called Handbook Journal. And let me see, I'm not showing it. There it goes. And it's a square journal, and it has watercolor paper in it. But for years, I didn't use a watercolor paper journal. And maybe your paper will get a little ripply, it will get a little bit of a wave in there, but it's really not a problem. Unless you're super saturating your paper, you can use any kind of a sketchbook. Just maybe not printer paper thin, a little thicker. But if you can afford it or you want to get a watercolor journal, they're really fun, but you don't need one. You can use any kind of paper.
Yeah, oh, that's great. I just love some of the themes that that have come out, or just the things that you were saying as you were talking about this. I mean, I'm looking at comments here.
you know, Jenny wrote, absolutely memorizing. I could watch this all day. I feel you have to keep going and don't freak out, like you said, right? Thank you. This is great. You're such a great teacher.
Oh,
Um, this was so relaxing and absolutely amazing to watch. Thank you. I love the just, and again, I think we know this, or I mean, it's the conversation has come up so often about take your time, live in the present, enjoy your moment, enjoy the moment, really. But the things that you wrote down early on in that first leaf picture about, I notice, I wonder, it reminds me, right? I mean, just
yeah,
kind of this, taking the time to kind of have, allow space for those thoughts as you're going through the course of a day isn't something that we always necessarily do.
right. A sense of wonder gives us such a different perception on life, I think.
Yeah.
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 And the idea of just, simple techniques, thinking, it doesn't, not about perfection, right? General to specific, if it doesn't look exactly like you want it to start, don't get wound up,
Yeah.
right? Take your time, think about, those adjustments. I mean, that's kind of life in our journey, right?
Yeah.
Is to kind of be able to embrace that too, right? It's not about perfection. It's about, the things that we're doing in the moment and being in it.
Yes, yes. You know what's funny is I was trying to make a handout for this class, and it was this sketch. Whoops. Yeah, this one. But I had a cup of coffee that I had drawn on the other page, and I used the coffee. I used the coffee I was drinking to paint the coffee in there. And when I closed the sketchbook, it got a smudge right there. And I was like, well, I'll remember that that was a really good cup of coffee.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, if you can kind of go with it, it makes it a lot more manageable
Yeah.
and doable, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I have a question for you. How many sketchbooks have you gone through in your lifetime? Thinking about all the drawing, and I think about,
Yeah.
when you're, you know, the, oftentimes so many people take pictures, right? Like the things that you're seeing, like people they'll stop and they've got their camera and they'll take a picture. And when you're, especially, I mean, that's kind of the way that my mind works when you're thinking about, oh, here's, this water flowing down and going through filters and cisterns, or how things were putting together. And it was such a mind bend for me to think about, drawing that out and taking the time to kind of think about that process
Yeah.
through drawing.
Yeah.
Imagine
I
you have
have
to have so many sketchbooks.
I probably more than 100. I think I
Yeah,
have more than 100. Yeah. Yeah. It really is a habit
yeah,
of mine. Yeah. So, but I
and
love it.
yeah,
I remember things better that way.
right.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
that's really fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Devin, for this wonderful presentation. I think everybody just really enjoyed it. It's yeah,
Okay.
it was really great. So thank you, and thanks to our audience for being here. We
Yeah.
really appreciate your time.
I had a blast. Thank you so much for having me. It was really
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that we said where. Could tell us where you're calling in from and about what time it is right
Oh,
now.
it is 1 o'clock in the morning. It's 5 minutes till 1 in the morning. I'm in Spain, and I'm in a small village. Yeah, but that has Wi-Fi. They call it Wi-Fi, which
Wi-Fi.
is
That's right.
Wi-Fi. Yeah, Wi-Fi. So
Well,
we're all good.
yeah, enjoy the rest of your travels. Safe travels all the
Thank
way
you.
and all the places that you go, and back home eventually to Arizona. So thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks again. Thanks
Yep.
for having me.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Uh-huh.
And up next, here in just a few minutes, is horticulture diplomacy with Stefan Strasau. So it'll be just a couple minutes and we'll be back. Thank you so much for being here.